research kind of mood in between the hockey games, and I've got the laptop out for this episode, doing some fun digging here, and in particular, I wanted to see where the Sidney Crosby line rated in the scope of the National Hockey League. I think the answer is going to surprise you a little bit. Good morning to you. Good Thursday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. The Sid, Ricard Raquel, and Brian Rust line has no weaknesses. You can look at that through... Actually, there's one, and I'll get to it in a minute, but you can look at that through conventional stats. You can see that Raquel's got 24 goals to lead the team. Rust is right behind him with 20, and Sid's right behind that with 17. Sid, of course, is the leading scorer on the team with 58 points. Raquel, 46. Rust, 40. Nice stuff. Now, they're all deep into the minuses, which is what happens when you get off to a start like the Penguins did. And in particular, the stat that I was referencing a moment ago was that they've been on the ice for way too many scoring chances for the opponent on the rush. They've not been good in that area at all. But the positives are overwhelming with this group. And I condensed what I'm working on here to a single statistic that I think underscores that in a pretty powerful way. The stat's called expected goals. Well, actually, it's expected goals per 60 minutes. And that means the quality of chances that you create that most likely would or should result in goals, with a lot of other variables being in the mix, chiefly the caliber of the goaltending that you're facing. You know, it's advanced. That's why they call them advanced analytics. So that's the category that I chose. I also wanted to make sure that I wasn't allowing for lines that have only been together for a short while, because anything can happen in a small sample size. So I made a cutoff that the line had to have logged at least 250 minutes together. Now, the Penguins' top line has actually logged 403 minutes together, so they're way above that. So I'm including a lot of lines. Only one line in the league, by the way, that's been together the entire season, every single game, and that's the one in Winnipeg. You might have guessed that one. Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, and Gabe Vilardi, 700 minutes together. But the Sid line ranks 7th in this, in terms of minutes together. And in that context, the only two lines in the entire league that create more offense, as measured, again, by expected goals per 60 minutes, one of them is going to surprise you. The Penguins just faced them recently, and that's Utah's line of Nick Schmaltz, Barrett Hayton, and Clayton Keller, coming in at 3.4 expected goals per 60 minutes. Next in line is another surprise, really. It comes from another recent opponent, and that's the one in Anaheim that has Frank Vetrano next to Ryan Strome and Troy Terry. They're at 3.39. After that, it's the Penguins line at 3.35. Now, why, you might ask? Would I bother looking this up other than the fact that it's, kind of neat? Well, I started off by just thinking about Sid's future in Pittsburgh. Is anytime you start getting into the standings looking dark and everything else, that's almost always, at least for me, the one thing that pops to mind is, how's Sid going to react to this? How's Sid going to handle this? But if you go back to late last season, when Jake Gensel was traded, one of the thoughts was, wow, Sid just lost the best left winger he's ever had. Still holds true. And who knows how that's going to affect him, whether it's, not just how happy he is, but also how productive he is and everything else. And I don't know that you could find a much better situation for Sid. Being realistic here, I understand that if you brought Matthew Tkachuk and Nathan McKinnon in to be his wingers, he'd probably up his production a little bit. But within, the salary cap, team by team world that we're all living in, this is a pretty good situation. Short term and even arguably long term. Raquel and Rust are right there at 30 years old. They're not about to go driving over the hill. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I saw this coming, especially with the odd year that Raquel had last season. He started really well in terms of everything except scoring. And then he allowed the not scoring to affect him, and then he got hurt for a while. He came back and scored a little bit, but the season overall left you kind of wondering about him and the contract and everything. Well, not anymore. So this part appears to have been worked out. Now, whether or not Kyle Dubas is going to entertain, I don't believe at the time that he will, offers for either player. I shouldn't say entertain offers. I should say actually execute a trade involving either. Rust has some no trade clauses going his way, I should also note. But if you were to keep this line together, just these three guys, Raquel, Crosby, and Rust, I think you would at least have the knowledge and the comfort as a general manager knowing that your living legend, your outlier in every way, as you do this building around him, would feel like he's taking to the ice with significant support. And not just at 5-on-5, because he's also going to have power play help. Yevgeny Malkin, Erik Karlsson, Chris Letang. And I am not ever going to be one of those people who just covers my eyes and pretends that this doesn't exist. Just trade everybody, get rid of everybody, start all over, blow it up. That's not going to happen. I don't believe that it should happen. I don't believe that it needs to happen. So there's something here. There's something here that's significant with this top line. And I have a feeling that it facilitates the building back up of the Penguins way more than it would hold it back. When we come back, J1Q. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NHL, NBA playoffs. Get the latest odds and lines, including all team matchups, player props, odds on just about everything that's out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. Today's J1Q comes from Ethan, who asks, so DK, if the Penguins aren't close for at least a couple of years, and that was something that I referenced on yesterday's program, it raises the question, do you believe Sid will win another cup before he retires? For anybody who missed yesterday's show, Ethan, I first want to reiterate what was stated, because I didn't make it that simple. I said that I find it unlikely that they would be able to contend within the next couple of years. I most certainly didn't rule it out. Whenever you're accounting for young players as a significant percentage of your roster, you can go violently in either direction. That's the volatility. That's the risk that comes with taking an approach that involves youth. Even youth as a side component, as the Penguins appear to be going about this. If Ville Koivunen comes up here, and I'm not predicting anything here, but if Koivunen comes up and starts putting up 3-goal, 4-goal games, we're having a very different dialogue about the franchise's future. If Rutger McGroarty gets it together down there and becomes more productive, keeps his feet moving more, that's something that the coaching staff is impressing upon him and has been all the way since his arrival. If you have variables that become really positive, glowing variables, like Brian Rust did, like Jake Gensel did, like, don't forget about him, Connor Sherry did, then you can have an acceleration of your overall process, and a really happy one at that. And I'm going to throw this to the back line, too. It always feels like when we're talking about prospects, we're talking about forwards. But let's not forget that I know it was just training camp and just preseason, but that the Penguins' very best defenseman back in September was Harrison Brunicky, 18 years old. I hate everything about the system that forced him to go back to juniors if he wasn't kept in the NHL, but that's the way it was. Brunicky's not going to take long to be here. The goaltending. Joel Blomqvist is already here, and in a sense, and he'd be playing more too if the Penguins weren't treating these as if they're playoff games. Sergei Murashov is on the way. We just don't know, Ethan. We don't. So do I think that Sid will win a cup? I think that the turnaround that'd be involved in such a thing would be awfully fast when you're working within the parameters of the 3-year extension that he signed. Could Sid play longer? I mean, I don't see why not. I don't know that he has to be point a game for all eternity, but I'm also not in the active business of doubting Sid at anything. So, there's a lot that can go right. There's a lot that can go wrong. But if you're asking me just to give you a plain and simple yes or no, do I believe? No, of course not. I don't see how anyone could based on the current circumstances. We need to see a lot more indicators, especially from these younger players, to feel that way right now. But I'll ask you, Ethan, I'll ask you this back. If Kyle Dubas takes all these picks that he's piling up, and he's already said publicly that he's open to doing this, when the time feels right to him, and he takes those picks, instead of waiting to utilize them in the draft, he can utilize them for other teams' prospects that are closer to the NHL, or even, kind of like Vasily Ponomarev, have already had a taste of the NHL, which in turn makes everything happen faster than it would appear now. But I'm basing the answers that I give to you here on what's there now. And what's there now? No, I don't know how anybody could believe that. I appreciate the question. A very good one. I appreciate everybody who listens to Daily Shot of Penguins. We're going to do another one of these tomorrow when I'll be up in New York getting ready to cover Penguins versus Rangers at the Garden.